On part A, I chose 30-30 and 22-54. You may have chosen two different points, but it still should work out the same. So in my case, it'll be 54 minus 30 over 22 minus 30. That will come out to be a -3. You should have -3 for your slope, regardless of what points you chose. I plugged in 30-30 to make it easy. So I put a 30 in for y, 30 in for x, simplified to get -90 and moved it over to the left. You should have had 120 for your y-intercept, regardless of what points you chose. So that makes y equal to a -3x plus 120. Now in part B over here, the profit function is going to be revenue minus production cost. I put an S there. Should be an X, but you can make it whatever you want as long as you're putting in the right stuff. But the price, X, times the number that you have, which is our expression we found in part A, minus the cost per item times that same expression for quantity, is going to give you your profit function. Unfortunately, this is where it ends for me because I discovered last period I made a mistake. Can you see what mistake that I have made on my key? It's on the next line. What did I do? Yeah, my ridiculous mistake is right here. It should be plus 21x. Instead, I put plus 7x. So we will go off to the right here and put the right work in here. And here's what it should be. Is once you put in the 21x and simplify your stuff, you should have this function, -3x squared plus 141x equals, not equals, but minus 840. And then complete the square from there. Section off these two, take out the -3, divide both of these by -3 to get these two. Half of 47 is 23.5. Square that to get 552.25. But what we really did is that we subtracted 1,656.25. So we have to add it out here. So here's our perfect square form. And then we have this on the outside, simplified these two. So you should come up with $23.50, which is 23.5 for the price, and the quantity 816.25 items that you could expect to sell. Today's objective is to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. That's the only part we're going to concentrate on out of this entire objective today. Okay, so we're going to start out with a little review. Look at the very first exercise. It is this. Solve the equation for B. We are solving for B. Now, it doesn't say how to solve it. It just says we're solving for B. We've solved quadratic equations before. We've solved with the quadratic formula. We've solved by factoring. So you can use whatever you want to use. But whatever you use, you should probably start off with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. You want to get everything into that form. Move everything to the left and set it equal to 0. On the left-hand side, we have 2b squared from right here. On the right side, we have 3b squared. If we move it over to the left, it becomes minus 3b squared. On the left, we have minus 9b. It just stays the way it is. On the right, we have minus 4b. It's got to go to the left of the equal sign, so it changes signs. On the right, you have a minus 14. Move it to the left, make it plus 14. So that everything is on the left-hand side. Once I have everything on the left-hand side, what should I do next? What is 2b squared minus 3b squared? Negative b squared. What is minus 9b plus 4b? So we'll make this minus 5b. Is there anything that I can simplify the 14 with? No? Okay, so plus 14 equals 0. Do you recognize anything about this quadratic equation that I could make a little bit easier? What's the first thing that you notice when you look at this equation? The first thing, from left to right. The first thing on the left. What's on the very left of this equation? A negative b squared. Alright, so what's the very first thing with that negative b squared? What is the furthest thing to the left you see on the screen in that equation? A negative sign, yes. Can we get rid of that negative sign? How do you change the sign of something? What operation do you use? If I have a positive 3 and I wanted to make it a negative 3, what would I do to it? We can divide everything in this equation by negative 1. If I do that, it changes the sign of everything through here. It makes it so much easier to deal with. We have solved quadratic equations by factoring and the quadratic formula. When I solved by factoring, I had to do what? How could you check this to see if it can be solved by factoring? If you can multiply two numbers together to get negative 14 and add to get 5. Is that possible in this case? Are there two numbers I can multiply to get negative 14 and add to get negative 5? If so, what are they? Say what? Negative 2 and 7. He is right. So I would have x minus 2, x plus 7. What do I have to do to solve it now? What's my last couple of steps? What do I have to do to find my two answers now? X minus 2 equals 0. X plus 7 equals 0. What number can I take 2 away from to get 0? 2. Or, what number can I add 7 to get 0? Negative 7. What is my first step in rewriting this expression by completing the square? Alright, so we have 1/2 b squared minus 4b. We want to rewrite this expression by completing the square. Okay, I've done that. So what do I do next? We want to move this half outside of the parentheses. And once we've done that, what do we do next? Yeah, divide each of those by a half. What is 1/2 b squared divided by 1/2? B squared. What sign are we going to use? Minus. What is half, or I should say, what is 4b divided by a half? 8. It is 8, yes. So we get 8b. Leave a space, and then plus 13. What's half of b? 4. What's 4 squared? 16. Have I added 16 to this expression? What have I really done? I have really done plus 1/2 times 16. Half times 16 is what? 8. So if I've added 8 to my expression, I must do what out to the right? Subtract 8. 1/2 times the quantity squared of b, and what sign? Minus, what's half of 8? 4, and what's 13 minus 8? 5. Yes, so here is the final answer. If I'm going to solve a quadratic equation, I must make certain it's in the right form first. How can I put this equation in the right form? We need it in this form: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. If I need it in that form, then what do I need to move first? Move what? X squared, yeah. And I'm going to move it over to the left. If I move it to the left, it becomes what? Negative x squared. What else can I move? 6x. I can move it to the left of the equal sign, and it becomes what? Minus 6x. Do I need to do anything with the 12? No. Plus 12 equals 0. What do you notice that is odd about this quadratic equation? Negative x squared. And how can I remedy that situation? Divide everything by negative 1. And when I do that, I end up with x squared plus 6x minus 12 equals 0. Okay, we want to solve this by completing the square. So I must group these two items first. I have x squared plus 6x. What is half of 6? 3. What is 3 squared? 9. If I add 9 in that quantity with nothing multiplied outside of it, then what must I do outside of it? Subtract 9. Okay, let's write this in the form that it's supposed to be in. X and what sign? Plus what number? 3. Square the quantity. What is minus 12 minus 9? Minus 21. But we have to solve the equation. And when you solve for x, you must get it by itself by starting to move items left to right, or vice versa, whichever the case may be, so that you're peeling away all the things that are around that x. We usually start with things that are plus or minus. What can I move to the right-hand side of this equation? Minus 21. I can move that to the right and make it positive 21. Okay, but that x is with a plus 3, and not only that, both the x and the plus 3 are surrounded by parentheses, and that quantity is squared. How can I undo a quantity squared? What's the reverse operation of squaring a quantity? Square root. So the square root of this and the square root of that. What do you think I have left on the left-hand side after I have taken the square root of the quantity squared of x plus 3, keeping in mind that when you square something, you multiply it by itself? when you're finding the square root of something, you only need one of something that I would multiply by itself to get back to that perfect square. What do you think is left on the left-hand side? We will break this down for you. Under the square root sign, I have the quantity squared of x plus 3, which is the same thing as x plus 3 times x plus 3. In other words, these two items multiplied together will give me this item here. So if this is the perfect square, what is the square root of this item if it represents these two broken up?
4.
Not 4. Not 3.
2.
Oh, we'll move off to the side here and address this in a sidebar. What if I had this? The square root of 9. Do you know what the square root of 9 is? 3. Can I not rewrite the square root of 9 as square root of 3 times 3? Isn't 3 times 3 9? So when I find the square root of 9, I only have one of those as my answer, 3. So come back over here and see if you can tell me what the square root of this will be. Is what? It's not 6. We will look at another one over here. If I had the square root of 16, could I not break that up as the square root of 4 times 4? 4 times 4 is 16. What is the square root of 16? 4. In other words, the square root was just one of those items there that I multiply by itself to get 16. So now back over here. If this is broken up as that times itself, and I'm looking for the square root of this, then what is the square root of this? X plus 3. Yes. X plus 3. On the right-hand side, the square root of 21. You do not need to find a decimal for that yet. You can write the square root of 21 as plus or minus square root of 21. The reason why it is plus or minus is this. Let's go back over to this side. The square root of 9 is 3. Can I not multiply 3 times 3 to get 9? That's why 3 is a square root of 9. Can I multiply negative 3 times negative 3 to get 9? Therefore, if this times itself is also 9, that means that negative 3 is also a square root of 9. That is why we have put plus or minus in front of our square root. Once you get to this point, you must break it up. You have two equations to solve. You have x plus 3 equals positive square root of 21, and then x plus 3 equals the negative square root of 21. All right. Square root of 21. Move the plus 3 to the right, change the sign. Over here, same thing, except it's negative square root of 21 minus 3. So So you have two answers to find. You need square root of 21, hit enter, and then do minus 3. 1.58. Or the answer could be negative. Hit the negative sign first, square root of 21, enter, and then minus 3. Negative 7.58. I have rounded to 2 places in each case. Sometimes the answer will be written like this, in the black boxes. So if you leave it like that and you see an answer like this, work it out to see if they're equivalent, or vice versa. We want to solve this equation by completing the square. What we can do first is to group these two together. Group those two together and remove the 4 from the x squared. If I do that, I'm left with x squared, but I now have minus 40x divided by 4, which is 10x. What is half of 10? 5. What is 5 squared? 25. Have I added 25 to this side of the equation, or have I added something else? I have added 4 times 25, which is 100. So I must do what outside the parentheses? Subtract it. Simplify this. X minus half of 10 is 5. Close the quantity and square it. 94 minus 100 will give me minus 6. We need to peel away everything that is surrounding the x in reverse order of operations. So instead of doing parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction in that order, we're going backwards. We're doing addition, subtraction, and undoing that. That means I'm moving this minus 6 to the right first and changing the sign, leaving me with this on the left-hand side. So that's it for addition and subtraction. Let's go to multiplication and division. I have a 4 in there. I'm multiplying by 4, so I must do the opposite and divide by 4 on both sides. Six over 4. You can make that 1.5. Just divide it. And then undo the quantity squared by doing this. And what is the square root of the quantity squared of x minus 5? X minus 5, yes. And we need plus or minus the square root of 1.5. 2 problems to do. X minus 5 equals square root of 1.5, and x minus 5 equals negative square root of 1.5. Solve each for x. All right, in your calculator, you're going to be doing the square root of 1.5, hitting enter, and coming up with a decimal and then adding 5 to it. 6.22, round to 2 places. On the other side, you have a negative square root of 1.5, enter, and then plus 5. 3.78.